This is Marie Manucherry. Thank you for listening to my channel. You can like or subscribe below. I wanted to talk about a topic that came up on the radio show today and also came up in my medium coaching course yesterday. And it's about how it really happens when you're communicating with a loved one who's crossed over, whether you are a family member and you're talking directly to a family member, communicating, or you are a medium, or you just happen to be put in that position, not knowing that you are a medium, which can happen, by the way. When someone leaves their body, and we all will at some point, we will walk out of our physical form or fly out or jump out or whatever, however we escape our energy from the physical to the non-physical, it will happen at some point. So when someone does that and they, leave their body, move through the astral plane, which is the dimension closest to Earth, it's the place of travel. It's where past lives can be visited. If someone doesn't want to cross over, that's where they're going to hang out for a period of time or long periods of time. Those people who stay for a long time, we call those people ghosts. It's a small percentage of the people who pass become ghosts, very few. So you can stay in the astral plane for a period of time and hang out and wait till all the funerals happen or the memorials or till someone spreads your ashes or whatever the person who is now deceased wants to do. And you can cross over whenever you want to. You can cross over immediately, or you can cross over days later, weeks later, years later. It's free will is the strongest law in the universe. And you can even, some mediums, I actually have that ability. I can communicate to someone who's in the astral plane, but some mediums need to wait till that person's energy is more completely on the other side for whatever reason. It just makes it easier, perhaps, to read their frequency or their vibration when they're in such a high vibrational area of light. The astral plane is a much higher frequency than Earth, but it's not quite as high as the fifth dimension or the other side or the heaven for our Earth. So when you're communicating to a loved one, whether you're communicating for yourself or you're communicating for another person, whether that's a career you want or you just do it, naturally, or it's a big surprise for you, the client really is the dead person. So the dead person has this huge perspective, this huge new perspective that they haven't visited or seen or experienced in maybe 100 years, depending on how long they've been in physical form. And so they cross over, they immediately get to see their previous lifetimes. They get to have a life review of the lifetime that they just had. They can even look into their future lifetimes. Even though we have free will, we can make changes. And so their awareness, their consciousness is superb. It's phenomenal. And when they want to talk to a departed person, because anyone on the other side also has free will, and they are less controlled by social norms, which do not exist in the multisensory world. So they only talk when they want to, or if they have something important to say, or if they want to be helpful. That's the only time. There's no rules, no obligation. They don't have to talk to anyone if they don't want to, who's in physical form, ever again, if they don't want to. So when that happens, that person who's crossed over is going to work diligently to communicate really well, to find someone who actually has the capacity to work as a medium, whether that's innate or learned or a combination of those attributes. They will actually read up on the human who will be doing the translating on their abilities. So I always call this the reader board. This is how my guides described it to me years ago. When I surprisingly found out that I was a medium, I didn't know I was. And they told me there was a reader board right outside of my auric field that had instructions for the client, which is the dead person, to know how I work, how I experience energy, how I communicate, what's important to me, what will catch my attention if a dead person wants to communicate with me. what won't, what's not going to work for me, what doesn't make me happy. So there's all this information. If you work as a medium, or again, you have these spontaneous experiences from time to time with dead people that you may not even know, but you are hanging out with their, loved one that's still in human form, or you would love to talk to your loved ones. There is a board next to you. It's probably a hologram, but they always show me like a sandwich board, like this, whiteboard, if you will. And it has information. Now, the information really isn't important for the human, because some of the things on the whiteboard will be nothing that you could totally understand from the physical perspective, or your consciousness may not be elevated enough to understand what's written on the whiteboard. But my guides did share a few things with me, because I was trying in the very beginning to understand how I'm going to communicate to this dead person. And my guide said to me, "Oh, that's not necessary. That's not your job. You're the translator." So imagine if we were in a hospital setting and there were a patient in a bed who did not speak English, and let's say the staff doesn't speak the language of the patient, and let's say that their family isn't with them right now, the nurse or the doctor would call an interpreter. They're always on call of every language you can imagine for hospitals, and they would come in as soon as they could if they weren't in-house, and they would translate. Their job is not to really understand backstories or get to know the patient or the nurses or the doctors or have any opinions. That's not their job. Their job is simply to take the information and translate it. So that's what you do as a medium. And I think sometimes people who want to have that profession or have that ability or want to talk to their loved one, they're trying to have like some emotional connection to it, but you're neutral. You're just translating information. Because if you're starting to use your mind to overanalyze and process the information that you're getting, you're moving out of the intuitive muscle and the frequency of psychic phenomena, which is not logical, but 100 times more powerful and more accurate than what your mind will ever tell you. So the reader board, will have all the necessary information for the client, so that the client knows how to get your attention, how to share information with you. Like, what if the medium is highly visual? Then the client, the dead person, knows that their job is to show you pictures of importance that will make sense to you. And everyone who's on the other side can read the energy of humans really well. They can read our history. They know what we like, what we don't like. Our world is deeply entrenched into the multisensory world. It's just so small. Our world is so small. It's kind of like tree frogs, because I have so many of them around my house. Cute little tiny frogs, big voice. They have a very different perception than I have of the environment that we both live in. They see tall trees and leaves and branches and grass. I may see multiple trees, lots of grass, fences, roads, right? We have a very different perspective. So Earth is like a tree frog. It has a very tiny perspective of this huge world that it belongs to, whereas the dead person has the huge perspective. They're not the tree frog. They're the road and the trees, if that makes sense. So on my reader board, it says, one of the things it says, because they told me a few things that are, and I can see my reader board, but I don't even spend time trying to read it because I just know it's really not for me. It's for the client. But it says on there that I'm not a fan of names. I don't really care about people's names. I don't really recall them. I kind of feel like it's a waste of time to try to memorize them. Of course, I have worked with many, many, many thousands of people over, the last 2 decades. So that would be another reason why I probably don't want to remember names. But I also experience people based on their energy. And it's very rare for me that their name reflects, from my perception, their energy. So I have no interest. So that's really good for the client, because the client may, if they didn't know that from my reader board, spend time trying to get me to understand what their name was when they were in physical form. Waste of time for them. I could care less. And then I'm going to be annoyed and frustrated that I'm not getting this information. and it's unnecessary because I can see what they looked like. I can understand their personality. I can hear the fluctuation of their voice. I have many ways to describe them that actually, for me, allows the person that I'm speaking to, the human, the being in human form, whom I'm talking to. And I will have an idea if this is a friend, a relative, a close relative, a distant relative. I'll just have some natural perception of what's going on. So I thought that would be very interesting and fun for you to recognize that you don't have to work hard on helping the beings on the other side to understand how your intuition works. Believe me, they know. Your job is to stay neutral, report or write down, if you're reading from your own family members, write down the information that you receive, even if it makes absolutely zero sense to you, because I can't tell you how many times I've received intuitive information from the client, made no sense to me. I didn't even want to express it because I thought it sounded silly, or, I was kind of embarrassed to even say what it was because it sounded so vague and random. But in truth, the client knows what will stimulate their loved one, friend, or family member to know that it's them. I once had a session with a family who had a great loss. It was a very tragic death based on a crime. And one of the family members didn't want to be a part of the session. So they were in a separate room. The family was at the time living overseas. And I was communicating to the family members that were present in front of the Zoom call. And the other person, which I didn't know, was actually listening from the other room. They were listening to the conversation, and I kept smelling fried chicken. Now, I don't eat fried chicken. I don't make fried chicken, mostly because it's breaded and I don't eat wheat. So it's not something that I'm familiar with, although I do think Kentucky Fried Chicken tastes so good. I haven't had it in a very long time, but even the rolls and the gravy are delicious. Now, I wasn't necessarily seeing Kentucky Fried Chicken. I didn't see KFC on a bag, nothing like that. I could smell fried chicken and I could hear the pop of oil. I could see a frying pan and different pieces of chicken. I don't know if it was breaded or not. And I could hear the popping of the oil, but the smell was delicious. So that means the person that I was communicating for, the client knows that about me, knows that. And most people would not know that. It's not something I even talk about. And they know that I love the smell so much. They enticed my olfactory senses so deeply that I couldn't stop talking about fried chicken, which made one of the relatives who maybe thought I was a little bit, weird or odd, or that the session would not be real. Who knows? I don't know their thoughts for sure, to come out of the room they were in, because it was so incredibly meaningful for that family member. And the dead people know that. And then, of course, we got to have this really great conversation and create more closure, because that person really needed the closure more than anyone else who was in the room. Fascinating. Remember, the dead people know your job is to stay neutral. You're a translator. Don't judge the information. Don't go fishing for it. Just stay in your body and be happy, because happy energy will elevate your frequency and help you to be very close to the vibration. Well, kind of close to the vibration of those who are living on the other side. Their vibration is out of this world, amazingly high. And when they talk to mediums or their loved ones that are still in physical form, they have to lower their frequency. And then us in the physical form who can communicate, we heighten our frequency and we work in the middle. And that's why we're called mediums. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a beautiful day wherever you are. Bye-bye.